Hi everyone, I'm Mims and welcome to the channel. Thanks for being here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Drop 'em 78, what it is, and I need to pick a deck for it. So let's start with that. It can be an online or it can be completely just in person. You do it yourself. Obviously you can do it however you want. But it's called Drop 'em 78 and it was initiated by Esther from Mindful Tarot. I'm sure most of you know about her, but just in case. And so it runs from, it's the last 78 days of the year. So it runs from October the 15th through December 31st. And we'll start with kind of what it is. So the idea is that you pick one deck as like your main deck. And this works for anybody. It can be you're a professional reader and you've been doing it for 30 years, or you're a beginner and you just want to get to know a deck. So you pick one deck, and then if you want, you can pick a second deck. The idea, if you pick a second deck, would be for, she called it a calibrating deck. So you can use it for contrasting and comparing the images, etc. If you pick a second deck, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One would be that you pick a second tarot deck and then you are looking at the same cards throughout the challenge. That's one way to do it. Another would be to pick a different divination tool. So like pick an oracle to go along with your tarot deck, or pick runes, or pick Lenormand, or whatever, if you want to do it that way. And then of course you could also just keep it to one deck if that is what you would rather do. And then the idea is that you're running through the 78 cards of the tarot for those last 78 days. And so the drop 'em is drop anchor with the pentacles. And so you're going ace through king with the pentacles, one card a day, and then respond with the wands. So then it's ace through king with the wands, and then open up with the cups. So ace through king with the cups, and then pierce through with the swords. So then again, ace through king. And then M is manifest with the majors. So then you're doing the majors, you know, whatever date in December. And so again, if you want more info, I will put the link to Esther's playlist. I think she's got videos from several years on that. And then, I haven't even seen if she's done a video for this year or not. Last year she also offered, and last year was the first year that I did it. Last year she also offered, like a Zoom call on the first day of the challenge. And I happened to be able to, it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday, and I was actually able to rearrange my teaching schedule that day. And so I was able to take part in that, but I didn't take part in the other ones. She does monthly Zoom classes, or like monthly free calls that people can join in. And I think the ones at the end of the year are sort of dedicated to the Drop 'em 78 topic, or it's a topic related to that. But you don't obviously have to do those. And then there's a few ways that when you're doing the cards. One is just that you are, you know, maybe you just journal with it, or maybe you put it on Instagram or Facebook. I think she has a Facebook group. I'm not sure. I don't really do Facebook with tarot. In fact, I don't really do Facebook at all. That doesn't matter. Last year, I ended up doing mine on Instagram, and mostly just because it was like an easy way for some kind of accountability. What I would do in the morning is I would journal and kind of consider it, and then at some point during the day I would grab my phone and take a photo. And last year I did two decks. One was I should have brought those, I didn't. One was the Neoteric Feminine Tarot, and then the other one was Pixie's Line Art Tarot by Vieux Press, which is basically a black and white, it's just the line art of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And so I used this as my calibrating deck. And the Neoteric Feminine Tarot it's an all-female deck, hence the name, or female energy, but it's very much like in the vein of a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And so what I liked about it was like all of the people in the pictures of that deck are in similar postures and scenes, even though they're in more, you know, modern clothing and all female or feminine. So this year I'm trying to decide, and so what deck to use. Pardon that. I've got my phone plugged in while I'm making this video. So that's it in a nutshell. And she has a few points, Esther has a few points about ways that you can reflect upon the cards throughout the day. So the first one I remember, and this may not be in the exact order, but this is how I recall it. So one of the things she said was, like, first, and again, this may be in slightly different form than she describes it, but one I remember she said is just like, what do you notice about the card? You know, what strikes your, you know, what catches your attention on that day? And that's what you can focus on. And she made a good example of like the Six of Pentacles. I remember she said she had never, or she said that for whatever reason, one year, she said the Six of Pentacles in the Ricardo-Smith deck really made her pause and notice how the money was dropping in unequally in the two hands that are outstretched, and one kind of like holding on to it. So that was something that she noticed. You know, so it's just whatever happens to strike you. The other one is also, what is the meaning of that card? And that might be different than what you notice, but what's the traditional kind of meaning of that card? How does that resonate for you? And then think about your especially if you're comparing two cards, what do you notice? How are they similar? How are they different, etc.? And then how is your day a Six of Pentacles day? Or how is your day an Ace of Wands day? Or how is your day an Empress day? Whatever it might be. And I really liked it because despite it's the first time I think that I had done any kind of like an online challenge. I really liked it. I also really liked that you could, although there's a structure to it, you can really do it however you want. And she did mention, you know, she said, if you fall behind, don't worry about it. Just, and she has all of the dates, I think, written out on her website. And she said, you know, you can always just double check, you know, what's the card for that day, or write them in on your journal. And then if you miss a day, who cares? And I kind of liked that. And I liked how personal you could make it. And of course it's a challenge, so you can do whatever you want, but I liked how open-ended it was, and yet it was a wonderful way for reflections. So what I ended up doing last year was I ended up making, and I've deleted them, I restarted my channel in the spring of this year, and I deleted the videos from last fall and the winter that I had on the channel, and it doesn't matter, but I'm just clarifying. What I ended up doing though was I liked making a video about each suit and reflecting on it. Like, how is the challenge going? What did I notice about a particular challenge? And I think I'm going to do that again. I liked it for the regularity because it was something every 2 weeks. You know, if you think about the suits and you're doing the minors first, so you've got 2 weeks. Anyway, I just kind of liked that, and it was kind of a fun way to reflect a little bit differently than just like me and my journal. So I think I'm going to keep up with that. So now the challenge is, or it's not the challenge, the fun part is trying to pick a deck. And I have a few. These are all recent, or at least new to me this year decks. And I'm going to show them all and then pick one. So Tarot of Unknown Shadows by Dark, which this is published by Dark Synevyr. Tarot del Fuego is another possibility. Goddess of Love Tarot by Gabriella Hertzig, illustrated by Julia Popescu. This is like very new, the Marielle Tarot by Waite, or it's new to me. And then the other one that's also very new is the American Renaissance Tarot by Vieux, illustrated by Celeste Pile, I'm not sure. So that's one decision to make, picking among those 5. And then the second one is deciding if I want to use this as my calibrating deck. I did it last year. I also haven't used this in a while, and it was really one of my, I got it in the summer of 2024, and I really like it, but I haven't really used it too much since the drop in 78. So I know I've already shown this a little bit, but so that's one decision that I need to make, is do I want to use this as a calibrating deck again? And one of the reasons that I liked using this one is it's familiar to me. I started with a Ricardo-Smith deck, you know, the plaid back one, and I really loved having this kind of black and white one. It kind of strips it away. This is published by Vieux Monde Press, and they, you know, it's a lovely, and I'm sure there's other versions of this, but they're an independent publisher of tarot decks in the United States, and it's lovely cardstock, and I just love how well it's done. And you've got these, you know, it's just the line art and the shading. So that's 2 decisions, and I thought I would use this video to make those decisions. So one decision is, do I want to use a calibrating deck? And if so, if I'm going to use a calibrating deck, I like this one for the simplicity, also because then it helps to kind of give me some ideas, you know, based in Ricardo-Smith. So that's one decision, and then the other is to decide among those 5. So these are in no particular order, it's just how they're stacked up. So Tarot del Fuego, I'm sure a lot of you know, but it's by Ricardo, Cavolo. This one is published by Fournier, and this is what some people, I think I remember seeing somebody talk about it as, this is the eyeball deck. This is a busy, full deck. In some ways, you could say, if I pick this one, I don't necessarily know that I would pick the Pixie's Line Art Tarot, because I do think that it falls much more in the, you know, in the, oh, what do you call it? Tarot de Marseille. And it's definitely a deck that I've been considering. I remember somebody talked about, or I think a few people have talked about, that, you know, this is one of those decks that you could study for years. And because the guidebook doesn't, for one, it's multilingual, and Fournier decks are sort of designed that way. They're multilingual, and they don't have a lot of extra in here. There's not, you know, you're looking at just like a few lines. So that would be another reason for picking it. It might be a way to reflect more on this deck and think more about those meanings. And I've heard, I have a tarot friend, and she talked about making her own deck book or guidebook for this deck. And so this definitely feels like that would be a lovely chance to spend the last part of the year. And I love like the bright colors in this deck, so it's definitely something I'm considering. And it's definitely, this is one of those decks, like, even though I haven't had it that long, I got it in the spring, it's a favorite, and I think it's going to be one of those favorites that I use for years and years and years. Like, this is always going to be within reach, I think. I just love it so much. Okay, this is a newer deck. This is the, or it's newer to me, this is the Tarot of Unknown Shadows. I got this at the very end of, yeah, the very end of August, the end of the summer. This was actually sent to me by the publisher, and I had a couple of other Dark Synevyr decks, and so I'm not just doing this because, but I really like this deck. And so Dark Synevyr is an independent publisher based in the Ukraine, and I just love this. It's this photo collage, and I don't know if I said the name, it's the Tarot of Unknown Shadows. It also has a fairly minimal guidebook. This one has 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Ukrainian. And you get a few, you get a few lines for each card. So this one does follow more in the Waite-Smith vein. And I loved how this deck, it's these old photos, or made to look old photos. I'm not even exactly sure. I just think that, I guess I've already shown you some of those, I'm pretty sure. I love how the cups, you've got these cups kind of floating, or these wands. I like this kind of photo collage. Look, this is the 4th edition of the deck. I think there have been some others where the lettering has been different. One thing I did do, I found it kind of hard to read the numbers, and so even though they're kind of like obvious where they are, I did, they were written in white, like here, and so in all the minors I traced the numbers, so I did want to clarify that messy writing is my own. So that's another deck that I'm considering. This has, while maybe not as many layers as this, I do feel like there's layers of meaning and symbolism within those old photos. And this feels also kind of like a neat deck to work with in the fall. Whereas this deck, I think, kind of brings some bright colors and energy. This sort of brings like a reflection. I love that sun card. This brings maybe shadows and reflection to the latter part of the year. And I could see where this would be a lovely deck to get to know as well. Another deck, I know this has been popular on YouTube over the last few years. This is the Goddess of Love Tarot. And I'm using this deck, I just got it, was actually part of a birthday haul. And I was kind of surprised that I ended up getting it. I thought the collage worked, but I still wasn't sure that I had planned to work with it. But it just feels like a great deck to do maybe some goddess work, some self-love work. And I thought that might be kind of fun to use this during Drop 'em 78, because it is in some ways, it has some, I would say, in some ways it feels kind of pippish, and then in other ways it feels very, scenic. So I also just thought this would be kind of a good way to get to know it. And I kind of love all those reds and pinks and this, collage work. And then because the book has, while it's not a very thick book, there's definitely a lot, there's some rituals and journal questions and things, and that would make it, would kind of add another dimension to it, especially for Drop 'em 78. And a great way to work with the whole deck. So that's Goddess of Love Tarot. And then the last two, my foot is asleep. Okay, let me get a sip of coffee, and then we'll look at the last two decks. I'm American Renaissance Tarot. This deck is one that I have wanted for a while. It came out in 2021, and it's published by, so it has this big chunky guidebook. So that's another reason for a deck like this. It would be great for a deck study, and it's already got a nice thick book to work with. There were a few things about this deck that I was interested in, not just for getting it, but also for using it as a possible study. For one, isn't that box really cute? So this deck, these are the backs, and so this deck explores the American Renaissance era, which is, I think, it's sort of considered in that like early 1800s, 1810 to like 1870, 1860. Let me look. So this kind of has there's a history bent, and there's also a literary bent to this deck. So one of the reasons that I thought this might be great for the fall is, for one, the color, and because it's new to me and I want to get to know it, you have, I don't know, it just kind of feels like a fall deck, and it feels like a great way to consider where we are in American BS, I guess. So this deck, one of the things that I love about this guidebook is you have each of the cards is represented, and it tells you right in the table of contents who they are. So like in the major arcana, you've got several activists and writers, like Henry David Thoreau is the hermit, Emily Dickinson is the priestess, Margaret Fuller is the empress, etc. The devil is racism. And then the Suit of Swords is based on Edgar Allan Poe. And then the Cups is based on Nathaniel Hawthorne. Wands is based on Herman Melville. And then Coins is based on Frederick Douglass. So again, it's a little bit of both the history and as well as the literature of that time. So again, I think it's roughly 1810 to 1870-ish. And so that is a consideration. The other reason that I thought this might be a fun deck to do for fall and with this study is I have been following the creator, Thea Wershing. She offered a class last year, and I didn't have the deck yet, and I didn't feel like I had the chance to purchase the class, I don't think it was that much, but they were studying the deck during the run-up to the presidential election, and that has stuck in my head for a while. And there's also a free online class, not based on the tarot, but there's a free online class that's the American Renaissance, which is, you know, it's basically the same era. This was an era that I was long interested in. I've done a lot of reading of Henry David Thoreau and Emerson and some of the Transcendentalists, and I've been interested in the anti-slavery movement and some of that. That's always been an interest of mine. So this was many reasons why I picked this deck up, but it's also one of the many reasons why I'm considering using it for Drop-In 78. And also it's a good excuse to get to know the deck better and to get to know the book and so forth. So that's another possibility. And then the last one that I'm considering is the Marielle Tarot. This is the second edition. This is published by Schiffer, or is it? Oh, Red Feather. And then I forget if this is, I forget if American Renaissance is Schiffer or, I don't know. It's also by Red Feather, I think. Let's double check that. That's just gonna bug me. Yes, Red Feather. They're both part of Schiffer, but I just wanted to clarify for myself. So it's kind of funny because a couple of these decks have very minimal guidebooks, right? Both of these have, you know, just a little bit. This has kind of like a medium length guidebook. This one, American Renaissance, has a chunky guidebook, as does Marielle. So either way, it's either part of this exercise, I think, would be either making my own guidebook, like in the case of this, where I might add a little bit more, or really working with a deck that's got quite a bit to it. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, and I have an unboxing of this, which I will link the unboxings of the American Renaissance and the Marielle, just in case you want to see my flip throughs. I've long been intrigued by this deck and the art and the shadow work that could be done with it. I think you definitely could do some, you know, religious shadow work with it, or just plain shadow work. And I just thought these images are just beautiful, and it would be a great way to get to know it. I have already been doing, for some reason I do think of this, and I think it's because a couple of people have mentioned that this is a great deck if you do want to work on like some shadow religious stuff. I have already been doing my own sort of ongoing study with Biblical Tarot, and have been doing, I have the Biblical Tarot of Shadows and I have the Biblical Tarot, and I've been doing kind of an ongoing religious study slash shadow slash whatever, you know, personal spirituality sort of thing. I've been doing that all along and will continue, and I'm probably going to continue with it into to next year. So I'm debating. Some part of me is like, oh, well, we'll start with this one and it builds on with the work that you've got. Or do some self-love work with this one and use the journal prompts with this, and it would work quite well, like it's already sort of set up. Or take a deck like this that you already love and really dive into the symbols and start making your own guidebook for it. Or dive into some of the shadows in this Tarot of Unknown Shadows, you know, dive into that and make your own guidebook. You know, it's a great way to study. And then part of me is like, well, this feels like a fall kind of study. It feels like a way to reflect on maybe even the election of the last year, past political movements, and so forth. And I can't decide. And then of course, you definitely want a deck, or at least I want a deck, if I'm going to work with it over the next 2.5 months, what makes the most sense. I think I'm going to go with the American Renaissance Tarot. And I think I'll see timing wise if it fits to take that online class as well. Not the one offered by Thea Worshing, not the one offered by the deck creator. I don't even know if she's offering it again this fall, but more with that online class. Can I squeeze that in and use this deck at the same time? I think, yeah. So this is going to be my deck for the Drop 'em 78, so I just need to get it in order. Now my next choice is, do I want to pair it with the Pixie's Line Art Tarot? Let's just, these are not going to be, and if I do pair it, Esther had mentioned there's a few ways you could do it. I liked doing it with the cards lined up with each other, as opposed to another way you could do it, she said, was that you would just pick another card, like so if you're working with the one deck, that you're following the order, and that the other deck you just pick a card and then you compare and contrast that. I think if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it that the cards are next to each other. You know, the same cards for each day. You know, like you know, the Six of Pentacles with the Six of Pentacles. So let's just look at these decks together. It doesn't matter as much like what they look like together, because it's not the same as like pairing it for like readings with others. But what do we think? And while this one definitely doesn't necessarily have a strict Rider-Waite-Smith, it's somewhat based on that tradition. Yeah, I think so. So two decisions made. I'm going to use the American Renaissance Tarot by Vieux, artwork illustrated by Celeste Peel, and I'm going to use the Pixie's Line Art Tarot as my calibration deck, and I am going to put them in order and compare them card by card. So again, Drop 'em 78 starts October the 15th, and I'm gonna probably do my postings on Instagram, and then I think I'll make a video every couple of weeks, just with a short reflection about that particular suit and how it went and so forth. So thanks for being here. Are you doing Drop 'em 78? Have you done it in the past? Do you like doing these kind of online challenges, or do you like to just keep it completely to yourself in your journal? Would love to hear. And I hope you're well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're finding ways to take care of others in a mutual aid sense. I hope that you are finding joy, and I hope you're taking care of yourself. And thanks for your time, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.